Hello everyone, and welcome once again to Define the Odds with me, Annabelle Kemi. Today on the show, I have a guest, one who works with the United Nations Women. He's a fantastic fellow. He was given a talk at a seminar I attended on gender issues, and I was amazed to see a man so passionate about women and furthering the cause of women in Nigeria and in the world at large. He's intelligent, he's an orator, and a good teacher too. I learned a whole lot from him, and I thought it was important that I shared this on the show, since this show is about encouraging women to be the best versions of themselves possible. And how can women actually become the best versions of themselves if they do not have supportive men, such as my guest today? He is none other than Mr. Peter Mancha. And thank you for sticking with me on Defying the Odds with Annabelle Kemi. Like I earlier said, I have a guest in the house, and he's none other than the amazing Mr. Peter Mancha of UNWOMEN here in Abuja. Thank you for coming, Mr. Peter.
Thank you, Annabelle, for having me.
It's been hard getting him to come here. Like, he's always busy doing one advocacy thing or the other. But we really appreciate what you do for women, and that is why, as you can guess, I have him on the seat today. I'm not going to be taking much of your time because I know you're a busy man. So, but first, let me just give you the floor to introduce yourself to my guests, if you don't mind.
Okay, sure. Thank you so much. It's a privilege and honor to be on your show. My name is Peter Mancha, like you rightly mentioned. I'm a program specialist with UNWOMEN. I've been a gender advocate for over a decade. I've worked with many local and international organizations working in the area of promoting girls and women's rights, most especially in vulnerable areas where women and girls are more vulnerable, especially in northern parts of Nigeria. So I've worked in the northeast, in the north central, and part of the northwest many years, implementing different projects to strengthen women and girls' rights. And then I'm a he for she.
That is
a title I'm proud to announce. I'm a proud he for she.
That's amazing. So You see, he's one of the few men we have in Nigeria that is proclaiming that he's a he for she with his full chest. Aren't you excited about that? So thank you very much, Mr. Peter, once again for giving me your time. I know you have a very tight schedule, so thank you for coming here today. But let's go straight to the point. There's this common misconception in Nigeria that I have observed, that a lot of men think the idea of gender equality and gender mainstreaming is just principally meant for women. So when they hear anything that has to do with gender issues, they just say it's women issues. I believe it's a misconception. What do you think?
Yeah, it is actually. But then I'm not surprised people have that kind of perception, because gender in the first instance is about men and women, boys and girls. But whenever you talk about gender, attention is given more to women and girls. The reason is not far-fetched. Women and girls are more at the receiving end when it comes to gender disparity issues. For instance, when you look at women occupying decision-making positions in Nigeria, you have a percentage of women less than 7% at both national and state level. In fact, in some states, it's less than 2%. 98% are occupied by women, by men rather. So that shows you that, okay, if you want to bridge the gender gap, you need to focus more on women. Like a lot of people say, oh, you and women, you work in the area of gender equality. Why are you always focusing only on women? And we say because the gap is so wide. If, for instance, we want to address this gap and we say we want to also bring more men on board, then we are widening the gap that already exists. So that's why people always feel, oh, gender, why always women, girls, not men. And not that men are not also at the receiving end, but if you look at the proportion, women are more at the receiving end. I gave an example in decision-making position. But when you talk about gender-based violence, for instance, 1 in every 3 girls or women have been subjected to one form of gender-based violence, all the other, globally and also in Nigeria. Not that boys and men are not abused, but it's in rare cases, it happens, but this percentage is very, very low. And because of that, there is more attention on women and girls. But so that does not mean that men and boys do not need attention. It just needs that we need to, I mean, if you have an issue, you focus more where it is pronounced. And then perhaps, and I tell people, maybe we'll have UNWOMEN when we get to 50-50, exactly, where we now have
totally.
like instead of 7% women in parliament, you have 50 men, 50 women. Then you can now start, like Rwanda, for instance.
Exactly.
Rwanda is a good example. Rwanda is a shining example, not just in the continent, but globally. It has the highest number, of women in parliament, and women also occupying very strategic positions. And I tell people that, look, if Rwanda can get it right, and Rwanda is in Africa,
an African nation,
better than US, and if you see the kind of transformation going in Rwanda, you will know that yes, if it makes logical sense to bring women on board when it comes to decision-making positions. So yes, we can get there. If Rwanda can get there, I see no reason why Nigeria and other countries cannot get there.
I totally agree with you, Mr. Peter. You see, the thing is, I think to a large extent, culture and tradition in this part of the continent and the world has kind of affected us in terms of women in participation and involvement in governance, issues that have to do with governance and other areas. In the home, for example, culture has been able to relegate women to a certain background that when I think about it, sometimes I'm like, when are we going to overcome this challenge? So you see, what is your what would you say when it comes to the role that gender and religion play in terms of women participation in Nigeria?
Now you have actually hit the nail on the head when it comes to dealing with gender inequality, especially in our own context. Culture and religion are two key factors. Of course, Nigeria, as you know, is a patriarchal society, but it is influenced to a large extent by historical, cultural practices and belief, deeply entrenched, that it's so difficult to change.
Sadly.
You know, when you grow in a particular culture and you see certain things taking place in a certain way, it becomes the norm. And you know, changes to cultural practices are very difficult. But I always tell people they are possible. Culture is dynamic. That's one characteristic of culture. It's not static.
Exactly.
Culture changes over time. And what I tell people is we need to look at our positive cultural values and practices and sustain them. The ones that are discriminatory and harmful, we do away with it. Why people find it difficult to change this negative cultural practice is because of lack of awareness. And I'll give you practical examples. While working in this kind of project, in Adama, Plateau, Gombe, over some years, we try to stop some cultural practices, like in the traditional institutions, where women are not allowed to sit and take decisions. It's only men. And we try to engage them. Why can't you bring women to lend their voices when it comes to security issues? Because they have a lot of potential, but you are not utilizing it. And they say, the only excuse they give is, this is a cultural practice. Our great-grandparents sustain it and we must sustain it. And when I ask them, but in the past twins are being killed. Why, some of you have twins.
Why are you not killing your twins?
Some of you pray to have twins, so why are you not killing them? And I give them another example. I say your great-grandparents used to wear leaves. They don't wear clothes. Look at the beautiful clothes you're wearing now. Why are you not saying our great-grandparents wear leaves? Why should we wear clothes? So for some of them, they reason. And I must tell you, it may be difficult, but it's possible, because we had this first-class traditional ruler in Gombe State, the Mayor of Kaltungo, who had 40 women in his traditional council. They take decision with him, and I was impressed. We engaged him in an interview, and guess what? He lived all his life in the US. He retired as a pilot.
So he's exposed
He's
to
exposed.
the importance of gender equality.
Exactly. So when he got back home, they gave him the first class traditional title. He said it makes no logical sense not to bring women on board. And he said initially, when he goes for meetings with other traditional rulers,
I can imagine.
they will say women cannot enter. And he insists, he stood on his ground that if my women cannot be part of this meeting, I will not be part of it. So over time, they got used to it. And we took that best practice to some states, like Plateau, Adamawa. Initially, they resisted it. It took over a year to convince them. We did a documentary, played it for them to watch. They listened to the traditional rulers, they listened to the women, and the kind of transformation those women caused. In fact, the mayor of Kaltungo said some conflicts that men could not resolve for decades, these women were able to. And statistics shows that women globally are better mediators than men. Yes, they are better mediators. So he now said, this is the best practice. And I tell you, with that kind of best practice, Plateaus reluctantly started by appointing 2 women.
Wow.
But by the end of the project in 2018, they had 107 women in the traditional council.
That's commendable. What? Did you say 100 and something?
107 women.
Whoa.
Who now sit with traditional from baseline of 0. The same thing in Adamawa, from baseline of 0, they had over 400 women. And do you know why the number keep increasing? They see the value addition, and some of them were like, why didn't you come with this idea earlier? We said, but we've been telling you. This example shows you that change is possible.
Yeah.
You just have to be strategic. Most of them, I tell you, they do it out of ignorance. And we have a responsibility of enlightening them and making them know that women have a value addition to bring to the table. And that's why we want them to be equal partners. We're not saying we want women to be men. We're just saying give them the space to contribute. That is possible. Culture, I tell you, is a terrible thing, it's a positive thing. We have positive cultural values. I'll give you an example. Respect for elders. I mean, I was in the UK and at the early stage, I entered a bus and an elderly man and woman came in. There was no seat. I stood up. I greeted them. I said, please have my seat. They didn't even respond to my greetings.
Because for them, it's like...
They don't know me, so why will I do that?
That's a normal thing.
I went back home and I told my host what happened. She laughed. She said, over there, you mind your business.
Exactly. But do you know it's not even, that's not even limited to the UK, even in some parts of Africa. But I know in Nigeria particularly, we are extremely respectful. So we have it at the back of our minds. I was in Rwanda, like you mentioned, some years back, and I found myself almost kneeling down to greet people, because it has been entrenched in me by my parents that I needed to be very courteous and respect older people. However,
yeah, I think it's a very positive. I'm just giving that as an example. So, and when I meet custodians of culture, I tell them we're not trying, because sometimes they were like, you want to bring foreign cultures. I said, no. Look at this respect for elders, for instance. We promote it. But harmful cultural practice, discriminatory, for instance, female genital mutilation, the devastating effect of that practice, it leads to death. It causes trauma. Most victims or survivors of this, I have gone to international conferences and I've seen women subjected, even here in Nigeria, the kind of challenges they go through. Giving birth becomes a problem. In fact, one of the reasons they say the lady, they do female circumcision so as to make the lady not to be promiscuous. But medically, she's more likely to be promiscuous because once you cut off the clitoris completely, sex is no longer pleasurable for her. And she may be moving up and down to get satisfaction. So you see, the aim is defeated. And I asked some of them, because we did a baseline survey in Northeast, where the practice, the prevalence rate was as high as 73% and more.
This was what year?
That was like over a decade, around 2010, in some local government area in the Northeast.
So is it on the decline now?
Well, I don't know if, from the information I gathered, it's still almost the same. And I remember we asked stakeholders like the traditional rulers, why do you want to retain this practice? Do you think we can change it? Most of them say it's impossible. Interestingly, including the women. Yeah. You know why? The women said it's a cultural practice that if a girl is not circumcised, no man will marry her in the community. And the girls are always looking forward to be circumcised because they want to get married. And then there is this misconception that if you are not circumcised, you will not be faithful to your husband, you'll be irresponsible, and all of them want to be responsible.
Wow.
So, and I asked them the question, so what kind of circumcision will you give the men to be faithful to their wives? You know, why are you selfish? And I tell you one thing. I went to an international conference on FGM some years back in Burkina Faso. And
FGM is female genital mutilation, right?
Yes. So, I mean, it was a conference to share best practices. And I tell you, Mauritania came with one of the best practices, which I brought back to Nigeria. They were able to stop the practice. And you know what they did? They brought their faithfuls, like medical doctors that were Muslims, who were exposed and understood the effect. Now they produce pictures and videos of how many women died and suffered, and played such videos for their community. So they went into communities and they used their own people. And when they watched it, they were like, oh, so this thing that we thought is somebody from the village is actually FGM that caused it. Because most time when they see the girls going through all this, they just say, oh, it's a spiritual attack and all that. They were shocked to realize that it was FGM that led to the death of so many innocent girls. So many, had issues giving birth to children, so many complications. And that kind of changed their mindset to say, okay, this practice actually we thought is good. We're beginning to see it causes more harm than good. Unfortunately, there is also what we call medicalization of the practice, where some people now will go to a hospital
to get it done.
Yeah, because they were like, since you say one of the reasons why you want to discourage us is that people or women that carry the act use unsterilized equipment and exposes the victim to HIV and other infection. Now we'll go to a hospital where they use
hospitals allowed to do that?
I mean, some do it, and that's what's called, it depends on the country, but especially in Egypt, it's quite pronounced, medicalization of FGM, where trained doctors do it, and
and it still boils down to culture.
Yeah, it boils down to culture, and it's a very it's not just, it's a violation of human right in the first instance. It's a violation. So that practice is one, and is tied to culture. What about girl-child marriage? It's also a cultural practice, okay, where people actually believe that, okay, a girl-child need to get married on time so that she will not be promiscuous.
Sometimes as early as 12.
Yeah, I mean, these are all violations of human rights. So you see, the culture, and I feel we need to really enlighten our people, to let them know that culture, our great-grandparents didn't know what we know now. Exactly. So the fact that they made some mistake doesn't mean we should
on the level of knowledge and their literacy.
So why should we now continue with that? It does not make any logical sense. And I tell a lot of these custodians of culture that if your great-grandparents come back to life, they wouldn't do those things because you are more exposed, you are more enlightened, and therefore it's your responsibility to do better. Because some of them, they get enlightened and they were like, but it's a cultural thing, we can't change it. And I say change is the only constant thing in life.
But you say in Africa, we're so sentimentally attached to our culture, our tradition. So it will take a lot, like you said, a lot of education. And this is what brings me to this question now. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, how would you rate the response of the federal government of Nigeria to gender mainstreaming and gender equality?
That was a very difficult question because you want me to be very specific.
Well, just give or take.
Well, I would say the government is doing quite a lot, but not enough. If I must rank it, maybe I would say on a scale of 10, 1 to 10, I would say maybe 4 over 10.
I agree with you.
The reason is because, for instance, we have some laws that have been passed to address these issues. For instance, the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act, which was passed sometime in 2015 at the national level, but now we have over 20 states have domesticated it.
And we have 17 more yet domesticated.
Yeah, I mean, but at least there are some progress. Very soon, all the states will domesticate it. But then the major challenge is not just domesticating, but implementing it. So that's where I feel there are gaps. We have laws. That VAP Act, if you go through it, it has provisions to address this, because impunity is one of the things that have, sustained this terrible practice, because a lot of people do it and get away with it. So if you have a law that is that enforces this provision and ensure that perpetrators are dealt, it will serve as a deterrent to others. So I think the government have really done well in, we have the Gender and Equal Opportunity Bill. We have the VAP Act. Nigeria has also, domesticated some international treaties that seeks to protect the right of women and girls, like CEDAW, like UN Security Council Resolution 1325 on women, peace and security. It has provision to protect women and girls, especially in conflict settings, from abuse. So there are quite a lot, I can go on and on. The good thing is, I would say, the government have really keyed into this, by signing these treaties, by developing laws. But where we have gap is implementation and ensuring that there is enforcement. I think that is where there are gaps. But I think we are gradually making progress. The security institutions are now becoming more gender sensitive in their operations. For instance, the Nigerian police, UNWOMEN supported it to develop a gender policy in 2010. Currently, as we speak, we are reviewing the policy. It's over a decade. A lot of emerging issues have come in. And then one of the things we discovered is that it's not having the policy, it's implementing it. So this time around, we need to put mechanism to ensure that the revised policy is fully implemented. The Armed Forces of Nigeria, sometime in March this year, also developed a gender policy for the first time in the history of this country. The Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps also launched a gender policy for the first time in July this year. And other institutions are keying in. Most of the security institutions now have gender desk units, to ensure that there's gender mainstreaming. So I think in that sector, we are beginning to see good transformations taking place. Some MDAs, ministries, departments, and agencies are also mainstreaming gender. Why? Because they have come to recognize the fact that you can't achieve any sustainable development without having gender mainstreaming. And that's why if you look at, for instance, the Sustainable Development Goals, 17 Sustainable Development Goals, gender is a standalone goal among them, but then gender is also a cross-cutting. What I mean by that is that there is a general consensus that you can't achieve any of these goals without mainstreaming gender. For instance, goal number 1 talks about eradicating extreme poverty and hunger. People were like, how do you do that if you don't bring women on board? Because most of the poor and hungry people are women. Yeah. So you must bring. What about goal number 2 that talks about access to basic education? Majority of the out of school children are girls. Yeah. So you see, gender is critical. You have to. So all the 17 goals, and I think that's why leaders of all nations are now looking at gender as a very critical element in their development plans, and any agenda for development, you must bring gender on.
That's awesome. Yeah. Thank you very much for elaborating on that. But there's something I've been itching to ask you. I know you are a he for she.
Yes.
And quite a number of men do not even get the idea of he for she. When they hear he for she, some think it's men just being women rapper, like we say in Nigeria. So would you kindly elaborate on the idea of being a he for she and why it is important?
Very good question, Annabelle. A lot of times people ask me, what is this he for she? Is this somebody that was a he and has become a she? Someone asked me that question. Someone asked me in a very serious conference, are you supporting Bobrisky? Are you, because they were like, he for she? Are you trying to become a she or what? So I explained to them, and I'll explain to you. The he for she is a strategy. It's a global movement that was launched by UNWOMEN. sometime in September 2014 by the then UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon and the UN Women Global Goodwill Ambassador Emma Watson. She's an actress, popular actress. So, so they came together and launched this campaign in 2014. And the rationale of this campaign is that they recognize the fact that you cannot achieve gender equality without the men. You need the men to push for gender equality.
Yeah, we need the men.
You need the men. And I tell some of the female activists who will say, these men are a problem and they are, there are men that strongly believe in gender equality. You need to engage them as allies. It will make you achieve better results. So that's the rationale. The campaign is like, look, let's bring men that are gender champions. Let's engage them to pursue the gender equality agenda, work with women as allies and achieve gender equality. Not just men, boys and men. Because the boys will eventually become men. And like they say, catch them young. So for instance, if you catch a young boy and you groom him to be a he for she, he's not likely to be engaged in abuse of women when he grows up. He will not rape women. He will not beat his wife because he grew up believing that men and women are equal partners. They have equal rights and need to be treated with dignity. So since the campaign was launched at the UN headquarters, many countries have keyed into it because they saw the result, and as I speak, billions about the goal of that campaign actually is to mobilize 1 billion men globally to be gender champions, supporting gender equality.
And how far have they gone?
They have made significant progress since 2014 till date. As I speak to you, there have been over 3 billion conversations on social media on he for she. You can log on to the website www.heforshe.org where you will see the progress being made globally. Nigeria key into it. In 2017, Nigeria joined other nations to launch the campaign at the national level. I was there. It was actually launched by Professor Yomi Osibanjo, the vice president, who was acting president at that time. And after the launch at the national level, as I speak today, about 10 states in Nigeria have launched the campaign where they are mobilizing men. And I tell you, it's yielding results. Globally, commitment are being made by men online. If you go to the website, you can. And interesting, it may shock you to know that the country leading in commitment, like men committing to the campaign, the number one is India, followed by Rwanda.
For Rwanda
is not a surprise. Yeah. So Nigeria is still lagging behind, but we are making some progress. I know that, like those states that have launched the campaign, they have formed networks of men who are now mobilizing other men. They go to school, they do go to market, like in Bauchi, in Benue, in Plateau, in Adamawa, in Gombe, in Borno, in Yobe. You see them and they are drawn from different sectors. Traditional institutions, religious institutions, security institutions, men mobilizing men.
Yeah, I must agree with you.
So the campaign is
quite a number of men these days that are really into gender mainstreaming and gender balance in Nigeria, and it's impressive. You are one of them.
And it's easy actually for a man to convince another man to be a gender champion.
And it's easy for a man to raise a male child to be a gender champion.
Yeah. So that's the strategy is working, and that's why it's gaining more popularity as time progresses. So we are making progress. I mean, like during the lockdown period, because there was increasing cases of rape and gender-based violence across the 6 geopolitical zones. So UNWOMEN, we were worried and we said, what do we do? So there was this hashtag, he for she at home, where we engage celebrities to raise awareness using social media platform. And it yielded millions of people came to it. We are sensitized, like RMD was one of those that came to it. Some of these Nollywood acts, even Joke Silva. And a lot of people were like, he for she, we thought it's only men that should be in this. No. Yes, it's targeting men and boys, but women, like Emma Watson is a woman, but she launched the campaign. Women can work. Exactly. Joke Silva supported it. She shared her story, how she molded her boys. They go to kitchen, they support, they clean, and all that. We had, other celebrities like Kenneth Okoli and some comedians like Funny Bones, among others, who did live Instagram on this he for she campaign and are mobilizing. The traditional institutions, like we talk about culture, if you go to the stage where we have launched it, you see them mobilizing men and sensitizing them. Those in the religious institution, they talk about it in churches, they talk about it in mosques. Interestingly, if you look at the scriptures, the Holy Bible and the Holy Quran, there are provisions that really, really support women's rights and women empowerment.
But sadly, most of the people who stand against gender equality, they use religion as a what would I say, justification for being against gender equality. They tell you it's not possible for a woman to be given the kind of they say power, but for me I want to call it opportunities. But they tend to say power. It's not possible for women to be arrogated the kinds of powers men are arrogated, because in a home or on a ship there has to be a captain. I get the whole thing, but using religion, you just said religion supports gender equality. I would like for you to elaborate more on that, so people get to understand that nobody is saying that what the religion says is wrong, but there is a way you can balance this thing up so that nobody feels cheated, and we move our societies forward.
So that's an interesting dimension, and I think the religion most time is how will I put it, is manipulated. I'm a Christian, and maybe I'll give you some examples from that perspective. In Christianity, there is provision in the Bible that, and I think it's the same thing in Islam, that the man is the head of the family. Now, we are not disputing that fact.
Exactly.
Okay, the man is actually the head of the family. We are not saying we want the woman to be equal or be the head. But what we are saying is that give her equal opportunity as you are giving the boy child. Give the girl child equal opportunity. Most times we're like, oh, she's a girl. So the religion you talk about, for instance, in Christianity, they say when a man and a woman get married, the two become one. It did not say one is higher than the other. It means they are equal. So I see marriage in Christianity as equal partners. And when you are equal partners, it means you complement each other. You may be the head, but you need your partner to succeed, and vice versa. So most times we just look at one portion of the Bible and generalize that. Oh, a good example, they will say, oh, there is a provision that says woman or wife be submissive to your husband. Yes, that I agree is there. But the same Bible says, man, respect your woman or care for your woman like Christ cared for his church. Now, for instance, if Christ loved the church, the last thing he would do is to lay his hand or to beat his wife,
to hit her,
or abuse her, or make her not to succeed, because Christ loved the church and will protect it by all means. So if you do that, why will you abuse a woman or discriminate against her? So for me, we need to look at it from both perspectives, because I've interacted with some Islamic scholars who have given so many provisions in the Quran that talks about women's rights. In fact, they emphasize so much on it that the Quran strongly support the right of women and girls. So I think it's manipulation. There is no place like in this scripture that said abuse a woman or deny. Gender equality, most times people think we are saying we want women to become men or equal to men. We are saying give men and women equal opportunity to succeed in their God-given potentials. Don't deny a girl access to education. Don't force a girl to get married before she is an adult. Don't subject her to any abuse because she's a woman, because she's weak, she's vulnerable.
Don't confine her to the kitchen.
Exactly, and say that's where she
belongs.
No. That's discrimination. And I don't think there is any provision in these two religions that supports that. So for me, it's manipulation, and we need to, begin to, unlike the traditional and religious leaders that believe in this campaign, they will tell you that there is no place that supports discrimination or abuse of women, and that's why they are keying into the campaign. So most of these things are tied to ego and ignorance. Most men have this ego
like that.
Yes,
Ego and
they just feel is How can I go to
So
the
at
market?
the end of the day, they're just using religion and culture
To cover up.
cover up.
There's nothing wrong with a man cooking for his woman. There's nothing wrong. They are equal partners. So if, in fact, some men say they love cooking, that's their hobby. But meanwhile, they get to the kitchen
Some of
to
the best chefs, are they not men?
Yes, they are men.
So-
Globally, the best chefs are men. So the issue now is if a man wants to go cook and then his mother-in-law comes and says in the kitchen,
Like
she
you
used juju. She used juju on him. How come?
That happened time that number on our Nollywood movies. But
Yeah,
the
but
truth
it's
is,
the
these are the things that
reality.
happen in
There's
reality.
nothing
Yeah.
wrong. There's nothing wrong. You know, you just need to complement each other. That's what partnership is all about. How do you support each other? There are roles that are better performed by men. So if there is a consensus between the man and the husband, then you share roles. Don't leave the burden to one partner to say, okay, for instance, I'm the man. You come back, you cross your leg, you watch TV, your wife bath the kids, she clean the house, she goes to the market, she does everything.
And that doesn't mean she's not even working.
Yes,
Sometimes
most
career
times
women
she combined
suffer.
that. Yeah. So the issue, look at Dr. Ngozio Okonjo-Iweala. She's now the DG of World Trade Organization. And you know, she has been in the World Bank, she has been the Minister of Finance and the Economy. She has excelled in her career. But one of the things I discovered is that first, she had a good foundation. She said her parents strongly believe in the right of the girl child. So she had the best education. There was no discrimination. But I've seen women like her who, having acquired all of this, marriage kills everything.
Kills them.
They get, I know of women
Kills
that
their
even
potentials
got
and their
PhDs, but then the husband say you can't work, and they are confined to be full-time housewives. But Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala also give credit to her husband because he also believed that she has the right to, you know, contribute globally. And that's why, you know,
he didn't
that
feel
position,
threatened.
he didn't feel threatened. So she said why she's making progress because she has a husband that is fully in
and
support of
supports
what
her.
she's
Yeah.
doing. You know, so that understanding is critical because if you have a partner that does not believe in you maximizing your potential, they will either
kill it.
they will halt it or kill it or discourage you. So I think it's at different levels. You address it at the childhood level. As a child, make progress. Another challenge is when she gets married. Does she get the support from her spouse to progress? If not, that's where the problem is. So I think we need to, you know, make sure that all those barriers from childhood, which is the foundation, up to their, you know, level of getting married, they get this kind of support. And one best way of doing it is sensitizing men from childhood to grow up. Because once they grow up, they will not depart from it. It becomes part of them. Because most of these practices, I tell you, check the history of men that have abused women. You will discover that either they were abused as children or they witnessed their parents, especially their fathers, maybe abusing their mothers, and it becomes like a norm. So they grow up with it.
Vicious circle.
Exactly. So it becomes
going
like, this is normal. My dad used to do it, so I can do the same with my wife. So I think it's something that is deeply entrenched. And if we need to address it, we need to go back to the basics and start it at the early stage. It's going to be difficult, but it's possible. Change is inevitable. Change is possible. If we can stop the killing of twins, I see no reason why we can't stop other discriminatory practices. So I believe it's possible, but it takes, you know, and I will challenge all the viewers to go on to the He for She website. Commit to read first. There is a page in 10 seconds. You provide your name. Let Nigerian number increase. Because we are really
to have more Nigerian men and women involved.
Yes, we need to commit. And then I tell people it's not just to commit. You put it into action. Some people come in public and say, I'm a He for She.
A whole lot of noise. You see,
but they go home and do the opposite.
Exactly. I was going to ask you when you were talking about involving celebrities and all, and I'm like, okay, most celebrities, we know they do all these things for clout. I'm sorry to say, because they need more fans and followers. But how do you get to the grassroots? Leave the celebrities that go on social media. We have a lot of Nigerians that are not even connected to the internet, that do not know anything about the social media. How do we engage these people without using the celebrities now?
So the He for She campaign has two strategies. The first one is online, because now the world is a global village, and that strategy, what you are doing now, is really reaching out. But we also have offline engagement.
Okay.
And in Nigeria, example of offline engagement is where we have launched a campaign at the state level, and we drew traditional rulers, for instance, at the LGA levels, grassroots. Now, if you go to these LGAs I'm talking about, those community leaders mobilize men in the LGAs and sensitize them, because this abuse is highly pronounced in those rural areas. So there are a lot of interventions, and we do that with other NGOs, civil society organizations, with government MDAs like the Ministry of Women Affairs. We go to the grassroots. We bring men from different sectors, traditional institutions, youth groups. We even go to schools, primary, secondary school, catch them young and all that. So these are ways you can do it without. So the online one is just another strategy, but one effective way, which is, if you ask me, is even more practical, is reaching out directly to the people,
to them,
especially the vulnerable groups, going to the grassroots. And I tell you, we are seeing the result. We are, seeing the results. Like in those communities, most of the girls and women we engage with, since the launch of the campaign, they have seen, even the men are a bit careful now. Like in Gombe, the women told us that before they had women in the traditional camp, men don't regard women. But when they now see that now decisions are taken about their men, and it's women that are part of those decisions, that they respect women, they don't abuse them like they used to do, and all that. So when the society sees that there is a system or a mechanism that deals with gender-based violence, they would take caution. Most times people get away with it because nothing happens. But when you have a system, and it's human nature, most times people break the rules when nothing happens. Just like the traffic light. Go to developed countries. It's so organized in such a way that if you break the rule, no one will chase you. But the camera will capture you.
Nigerians who break the rules when it comes to traffic lights in this country when they are back home. They don't do it when they are outside.
Yes,
Nigeria.
because
so
the system works there.
The system works.
So here we need to make sure we have systems and mechanisms, because people are bound to be deviant. It's natural. People are bound. When you say don't do this, that's when they want
to get
interested.
interested.
They say don't eat apple. Adam ate apple.
And he blamed the woman.
And he blamed the woman. So it's something that started right from the creation of man. And I think it's human nature. So
that was an interesting one. So I'm glad that you said you get to the grassroots level, and it's a good thing to know that at least you carry everybody along. But you see, I think this task is not one that can easily be fully dealt with just by your organization and probably a few other organizations that are involved. Don't you think the Nigerian state should think of making it more open for Nigerians to get involved in stuff like this, as in advocacy? Because I know that we speak about it, like you said, there are so many policies surrounding it. But implementation, if the Nigerian government has not done much in bringing women on board in politics, do you not think that we are just practically deceiving ourselves if we say more men should get involved in speaking up for women and equality? Are we showing our children a good example when they see that even in the parliament, we don't have enough women speaking up? And even when there are few women there, their voices are drowned by the voices of the men. These are the things we see every day. What do you think that the Nigerian nation needs to start doing intentionally? Now, from your experience, what are the steps you think we should take intentionally as a nation to begin to mainstream gender indeed, and not just paying lip service to it?
Another interesting question. I think it has to be a multidimensional approach, because the issues are quite diverse. So if you need to deal with these issues, you need to first be strategic. And when I say strategic, I mean not jamboree activities.
Exactly.
So when you want to be strategic, you need to look at the practicality of dealing with these issues. And there are many ways I think the government can do. For instance, let's look at the issue of low representation of women in governance and decision making. one of the reasons why this issue will continue to remain an issue is because we don't have an enabling environment for women and men to compete favorably. Is more women are more at a disadvantaged position, and if you don't address those barriers, then we'll just keep talking about it. After the last general election, UNWOMEN brought all the women that contested at national, state, and LGA levels just to sit and share their experiences. It may interest you to know that most of them said they had to step down because they were threatened either by their husbands. Yes, some of them were like, look, choose between your marriage or your political ambition. And because they didn't want to lose their marriage and their children, they dropped down. Some, they were threatened, that they will be harassed, they will be killed and all that. So the enabling environment need to be, how do you put, and that's why what we are doing is critical, sensitizing men. Imagine if all men are like the husband of Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala.
Or the late husband of
Dora Akunyili. Exactly, who supported his wife as well. So for me, we need to see how we can address that. Secondly, another important way of dealing with that issue is let the political parties come up with policies. I tell people we can, address this gender parity in election when, for instance, a political party has a policy to say, okay, if a man is contesting for president, the vice, his running mate should be a female and vice versa. If they do that, that will address the issue.
A whole lot, yes.
Let the political parties also have provisions that says no meetings late at night. Some of the women say...
So that it makes it easy for women to participate.
Some of them say most of the meetings are set for 12 midnight. And in our own system, a married woman going out by 12 midnight, the husband will say she's irresponsible. Exactly. So this is the enabling environment I'm talking about. Whatever a political party set up, they need to be gender sensitive and say, okay, if we put meetings for 12 midnight, it will not be favorable to women. Let's make sure we put it at a time that, in quote, decent women can go out. So these are things I feel we can do. But apart from, that, I think the government also need to invest. When I say invest, it's like annual budget, for instance. How much budget do you allocate to MDAs to address gender gaps? Most times it's very insignificant. It's always the least in all MDAs. So there's...
So we don't even appreciate the problem.
Yeah, because if you see gender, and we mentioned it earlier, that gender is cross-cutting. If you want to address it, all sectors. So if you consider it important, then you need to have budget provisions. You need to invest. You can't really enjoy the benefit. Rwanda, for instance, is doing well because they are investing so much in gender mainstreaming. So if government come up with policies and you don't have the enabling environment to implement those policies, and if you go to some of the MDAs, they'll say, look, we have this policy document, but we don't have the resources to implement it. We want to sensitize people, but we need money to move around. We don't have logistics. So for me, I think the government need to, support policy action with funding, and then build the capacity of the different institutions that are working in this area. A lot of them, there are capacity gaps. You can't give what you don't have. So for me, there is this, it goes beyond, for setting the policy, yes, it's a good step, but it should go beyond that. Let those policies, let there be a mechanism for implementation. Government need to strengthen that. And I think it's important for government to also see development partners as critical partners that will support their achievement. Rwanda, if you go, you see most of their achievement because they are keen into what the development partners are doing. And I think Nigeria is not doing badly in that, but I just feel the investment in gender mainstreaming is more from development partners than government itself. They need to budget, integrate it into budget and ensure that those budgets are released for the different ministries of women affairs, for different MDs to mainstream gender. Once that is done, I tell you, we'll get there.
Thank you so much. That was so nice to hear. And by the way, he was talking about volunteering.
Yes.
You can volunteer by going to the sites.
Yes, I mean, you mean the he for she?
He for she?
Yes, you can go to the website www.heforshe.org. Once you go there, you get all the information on how you can volunteer to campaign, for gender equality. You will see, you can go to Nigeria and see the profile. You can actually click on commit to be, a committed he for she champion, and your name will be registered. And then you see some best practices, not just in Nigeria, globally.
So
you learn more. Yeah, and I think we supported the government of Nigeria to launch a website on women, peace and security. Awesome. Is wpsnigeria.net. WPS is Women, Peace and Security Nigeria. So if you go there, most of these success stories I talk about, the video documentary of the mayor of Kaltungo and how men are engaging other men, you see all of those videos on that website, wpsnigeria.net. Log on to it, and I'm telling you, you'll see case studies and best practices that you can actually replicate.
And will encourage more participation.
Exactly.
Thank you so much. It's been so refreshing speaking with you. Anytime I get to talk to you, I'm like, by the way, do you know how I met him? I met him whilst he was giving a lecture. I was a participant on the seminar, and since then I knew I just had to have him on the show. And you can imagine how starstruck I am just sitting here and talking to him. Thank you so much for coming today.
Annabelle.
But before you go, I have been itching to ask you this. What motivates you?
What motivates me to be a he for she or a gender champion?
Exactly.
That's a $1 million question. I think it's a very simple question. I think what motivates me is the fact that I think I grew up in an environment where gender inequality, is an issue. And I see how women suffer and girls suffer. And one of the things I told myself is that I can't just be watching. There are people, 3 categories of people: those that make things happen, those that watch things happen, and those that talk about things happen.
Did you guys hear that?
And I asked myself, which of these categories do I want to? I say, I have to be among those that make things happen, not just talk about things happening or watch things happening. And I say, okay, how do I make things happen for gender equality? And the reason is because I live in an environment as a child where I see a lot of women being abused in my communities, and I'm like, what can I do? I don't want to watch or listen. I want to do something. And that was why I look for a platform to join NGOs and development work. And that inspires me. And I think what keeps me going is that each time I meet women and girls that I have supported and have transformed their life, when they share their success stories and say, because of your intervention, I have a better life, I'm now happy, it brings joy to my heart. And I said, all this fight and all this struggle is worth it, because there's nothing as good as putting a smile to vulnerable people. So that keeps me going, especially when I hear from these women. I go to the Northeast, I go to IDP camps, and some of the things they tell me honestly keeps me going. No matter what the obstacle, I don't give up, because I remember these people value what I'm doing, and these things that I'm doing is impacting life. For me, these are things that keep me going.
Making impact.
Yeah, making impact.
And in making impact, have you experienced any forms of criticisms?
Oh, obviously. Backlash, I can imagine. So many times, but I'm prepared because it's inevitable. I've gone to government institutions, security institutions, where they say terrible things, that gender equality, you must be stupid. What are you talking about? Get out of my office. I've experienced that, but I never gave up. Some of these people that chased me out of their office were calling me and begging me to please support. They want to, because like I tell you, when you get resistance, it's inevitable. You change your strategy. I don't give up easily. I've met, like those traditional rulers I told you, it took over 1 year. The first time, the first time they were like, don't even go there. In fact, they didn't allow me to talk. So we kept changing strategies. We sensitized them. It didn't work until we did that video documentary. They watched it. They listened to the traditional ruler. They saw the women. They saw the conflict those women solved, and they were like, what? Let's give it a try. So for me, it encouraged me that yes, it may be difficult, it may be time consuming, but it is possible. Nothing is impossible once you put your mind into
Into
it
it.
and you work towards it. And I tell people, success is not, you will not enjoy success when you get it easily. You enjoy success when you overcome challenges.
Wow.
That makes it even worth a success.
Nice. That was a whole lot of motivation going on there. Thank you so much, Mr. Peter. It's
Thank
been
you.
awesome having you here. And you heard from him. He's a man like some of you are. I know there are lots of women and men listening today and watching this show. And I hope that this encourages you to do something about the issues you see around you so that you can make more impact on society, on the universe at large. In my opinion, you are not living until you begin to make impact.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Mr. Peter, for making impact on Nigeria and on the girl child. I'm passionate about women and the girl child, and I'm excited to see someone like you, someone of your stature, a man doing this. And I hope that someday in the future I can still drag you back here to come so we can keep rubbing minds and sensitizing as many people as possible to begin to support gender balance, gender equality, and gender mainstreaming in Nigeria, in Africa, and in the world at large. Before I go, I have to do something. It's a ritual because I only bring stars to this place, and as you can see, I have a fantastic one here. So today, I have a gift for you.
Oh, really?
I can't just let you go.
I love gifts. So.
Don't we all? So because you are a star that has been championing the cause of women and helping to make the world a better place, I needed to say thank you my own way by giving you, excuse me, this tiny gift. I hope you like it, and I hope you find a place in your house, in your car. It says, I am a star. Thank you for coming on
I'm a he for she star.
Yeah, a he for she star.
Yeah.
I totally appreciate you for coming, and I hope this reminds you of your visits.
Oh, definitely. Oh, definitely. This is a special gift, and thank you so much. And also, I must commend you for what you are doing.
Thank you.
See us as your partners on this agenda, and please keep up the good work.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for this
It was
lovely
nice
feeling.
having you here.
Same
So
here.
guys, on that note, I'd like to say thank you for hanging in there with me today. I've had a fantastic time, and I'm sure you also must have had a good time, and you must have learned a thing or two from our conversations. Remember to log on to www.heforshe.org so you can commit to it and you can volunteer and learn more too on how to encourage women and to build a society that is fair to all, male and female. Thank you so much for coming on Define the Odds, and let's do this again next week. Bye.